It's no secret that the ending of Attack on Titan had not only brought out sadness for the series being finished, but also a wave of controversy that has never really gone away. And with the final episode ending one of the most popular and iconic anime of all time, many fans are left wondering if the anime has departed from the manga in any way. The series still ends in the same place, but there are multiple changes to certain scenes throughout. Here, we are going to be breaking down the top 5 biggest changes from the original Attack on Titan manga, and the last change, trust me, is definitely the most significant of them all. The first change on this list comes from a conversation between Mikasa and Eren. Eren's last words with Mikasa were him saying that he always hated her, and he could not let it stay that way, so he told her otherwise during his visits with her through the paths. Here he tells her that he wishes he could just run away with her to a quiet place and live out the rest of his 4 years, like she had always told him before. But his circumstances won't allow this. He tells her that when he dies he wants her to live a long life, throw away the scarf he gave her and forget about him, and all the pain he caused her. This interaction was more or less the same in the manga when it comes to the plot, however, it was stretched out a noticeable amount in the anime. Rather than being a brief scene, it took its time with holding on singular shots and put more focus on their feelings in the moment rather than just dialogue. This makes the scene last significantly longer, which ends up creating even more of an emotional punch than the manga had. The second change is the result of leaving a scene absent. Sometime after the Battle of Heaven and Earth, Armin and the rest of the group are on a boat discussing the question of their certainty of the future, specifically of Parody and the Allies, as they are on their way to negotiate peace with the other allied nations. It is brought up that they don't know if they will end up listening to them, or if they will just sink their ship right there. The anime leaves out a small detail regarding why they have hope for safety, specifically this time from Eldia, because they were labeled as traitors. In the manga it said that Historia took John and Koni's family under protection, likely so that the Jaegerist would not retaliate against them, because they were amongst the traitors who stopped the rumbling. This, of course, adds to Armin and the others' reasoning in regards to just why it is they believe they had a chance for a discussion of peace with Historia and the rest of the Eldian leadership and nation. The third change on this list is among the episode's closing moments. Before it wraps up, there is a montage of Eldians living out their lives in relative peace. During the sequence, Levi is seen handing out candy to children. Gabby and Falco, now slightly older, are seen gardening together, smiling and clearly being present in the moment. In the manga, however, these scenes were not present. Instead, there was a brief scene with Onyankopon, Gabby, Falco, and Levi in a city that very closely resembles London. This change doesn't create a different story, but it does make the montage more impactful as we spend more time viewing characters during their own experiences now. The fourth change occurs during the epilogue. In the manga, we are shown Mikasa's funeral and then see Parody grow and evolve into a modern nation with tall buildings and cars and all that. We are then shown its militarization and a war that takes place. Parody is then bombed until its complete destruction. Because of the state of the city, it appears to resemble a modern-day setting. This means that Parody likely did not even last a century before it was attacked and destroyed. However, in the anime we see the same scene during the credits, but instead of growing to a modern state, it continues on until we see a futuristic-looking city. Then the war begins and Parody is bombed and destroyed. This change may seem like a small detail, but in actuality it ends up being a lot more impactful to the characters that we know. In the manga, Parody lasted likely around 70-ish years, give or take, meaning many of Eren's friends and friends' family were likely still alive and were wiped out, which then means that Parody had been in war for however many years prior to its destruction, and the peace was short-lived. In the anime, however, Parody likely lasted several centuries later, meaning Eren did actually achieve peace for all those that he thought of during the rumbling, as in his closest friends and their families that he claimed were all he cared about. While we don't know the exact events, we can assume that they lived out the remainder of their lives in, again, relative peace. Both the manga and anime include the kid and dog walking up to the tree years after Parody's destruction, ending the story in a similar place where it all began with Ymir. Now, the final point, which is definitely the most significant in terms of the impact of the message of this entire series. But before we cover exactly what that change is, if you enjoy anime or tokusatsu, or both, now is my time to ask you to hit that subscribe button and leave a like. Every click makes a world of a difference. Now, the number one change actually ends up being a series of changes in a single conversation between Eren and Armin during his visits with Armin in the paths. The two of them are discussing the events of the story, Aaron's actions, and how to move forward from there. The first of the changes occurs in the setting. In the manga, the two of them are sitting in craters created from the rumbling. While the anime has them also in the craters, they're also filled by a sea of blood and crushed and mutilated bodies. This change makes Armin's realization, when Aaron tells him that he doubts any of them wanted to die either, that much more shocking. The anime also changes a bit of the specific dialogue between the two. They leave out a line where Aaron confirms that he expected the allies to stop him, but even if they didn't, he still would have flattened the earth. His plan was to be stopped, but he didn't really care whether that went through or not, because he'd still be achieving the same goal. While the idea is present in the manga, the anime does put a lot more stress on Aaron saying he was just a child and an idiot, which is why this was the only plan he could think of.
どこにでもいるありふれたバカが力を持っちまった。だからこんな結末を迎えることしかできなかった。
The founder's power scrambled his mind and time. The past, present, and future exist all at once, so he quite literally is an adult, teenager, and a child at the same time. Considering the series' emphasis on the importance of our past, it all makes sense why we keep seeing these characters, specifically Aaron, as a child. Lastly, and probably the biggest of these changes, was a replacement of Armin's dialogue. In the manga, Armin thanks Aaron for turning himself into a mass murderer for their sake. The anime, however, completely removes this and instead has Armin confessing his equal responsibility to Aaron. Armin exclaims that his hands are equally covered in blood. He not only murdered his friends to get to Aaron, but he was the one who showed Aaron the book of the world outside the walls that started all of this in the first place. Armin then bids farewell to Aaron, saying that he will meet him again and they will be together forever, in hell. In fact, the other characters like John and Reiner don't compliment Aaron after the events of the final battle this time. Instead, they mourn the monster he became and understand the horrors they themselves have committed as well. This was all most likely added to stop people from continuing to defend these characters' horrible actions, specifically to discontinue people's defense of Aaron, and instead reinforce the message that he's not the cheered on, endearing shonen protagonist people have seen him as. Rather, he is a broken child and a murderer. Now that it's over, all the changes made were not there to change the story, but instead they enhanced the messaging that was already there. What were your thoughts on the changes that were made? There's a lot of controversial opinions on the ending, so now's your chance to leave a comment as well. Did the finale do the series justice? Thanks for tuning in. I've been Shin Glassman, along with one more call to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.